Before the world places its weight on my shoulders, I place my own weight on my mind. This is how every day begins, not with the sound of voices, not with the pull of tasks or expectations, but with the quiet question of who I will be when the noise arrives. I sit in that stillness and listen, not for answers from outside, but for the movements inside me that most people never pause long enough to notice. The mind wakes up restless. It brings with it yesterday's worries, tomorrow's plans, and the small fears that hide in between. I do not push them away, I watch them. I let them show themselves like travelers passing through a gate, because what you see clearly you no longer have to fear, what you ignore you allow to grow in the dark. In those first moments of the day, I do not ask what I want, I ask what I need to release. I release the need to be seen. I release the need to be praised. I release the need to be comfortable. These things weigh heavily on the mind even when we do not realize we are carrying them. When I set them down, I feel lighter, and a lighter mind moves with greater precision. Breath by breath, I bring my attention back to the present. The simple rise and fall of the chest becomes a reminder that I am here, not in the memory of what was, not in the dream of what could be. Here is where strength lives, not in the stories we tell ourselves, but in the moment we stand inside. There were times when I believed that the world was my opponent, that people, events, and circumstances stood in my way, but I learned that the real contest is always within. The hesitation before a step, the anger before a word, the doubt before a decision. These are the true challenges, and if I can meet them calmly, everything else becomes manageable. I begin each day by training my attention because attention is the blade of the mind. Where it points, energy flows. If it points toward fear, fear grows. If it points toward purpose, purpose strengthens. So I choose carefully. I choose to focus on what I can shape, not on what I cannot control. There is a quiet power in making this choice before anything else happens. When the day later brings its surprises, its delays, its small frustrations, I recognize them as echoes, not as commands. They do not decide my direction, I have already decided. I remember mornings when the weight of the path ahead felt heavy, when the distance between where I was and where I wanted to be seemed too far to cross in a single day. In those moments I learned to shrink my vision, not to think of the whole journey but of the next step, just one. Strength is not built by carrying the entire mountain in your arms. It is built by lifting one stone at a time. As the sun rises, the world begins to move. Voices appear, demands arrive. The mind is tempted to scatter itself in 100 directions at once. This is where the morning practice shows its worth. I feel the pull, but I do not follow it. I return to the calm I cultivated in the quiet. That calm becomes my center, and from that center I act. There is a difference between being busy and being deliberate. Busy is when the world moves you. Deliberate is when you move within the world. I aim for the second. Every action, even the smallest, carries intention. A step is taken because it leads somewhere, not because I was pushed. People often ask how one can remain steady when others are loud, when circumstances are harsh, when the path is uncertain. The answer is simple but not easy. You must meet yourself before you meet anyone else. You must know the sound of your own thoughts before you listen to the voices around you. Otherwise, you will always be answering someone else's call instead of your own. There were days when I failed at this. Days when I let irritation guide my words, when I let impatience guide my hands. Those days became lessons. I did not punish myself for them, I studied them. What did I miss in the morning? Where did my attention drift? Each mistake pointed back to the same place, the need to return to the beginning, to the quiet, to the moment of choice. Over time, this practice changes how you see yourself. You stop thinking of strength as something you show when challenged. You begin to see it as something you carry all the time. It becomes part of your posture, your breath, your way of standing in a room. Others may feel it before they understand it. I have learned that confidence does not come from knowing you will win. It comes from knowing you will not lose yourself no matter what happens. That knowledge is forged in these early moments when the day is still empty and the mind is still open. As I move through the hours, I return again and again to that first stillness. A brief pause before a response, a breath before a decision. These small returns are like tying a thread back to its source. They keep the mind from drifting too far from what matters. There is a discipline in this, but also a kind of peace. You stop chasing the day, you walk with it. You stop fighting the world, you meet it. And in that meeting, you discover that much of what you feared was only noise. The habit of beginning this way becomes a foundation. When storms come, you do not scramble to build shelter, you already have one. When praise comes, you do not swell with it, you already know your worth. When criticism comes, you do not shrink, you already know your direction. I speak to you now not as someone who has reached an end, but as someone who has committed to a beginning every day. This beginning is not marked by a clock or a ritual. It is marked by a decision, the decision to stand inside your own mind before you step into the world. So when you open your eyes tomorrow, do not rush to meet the noise waiting for you. Sit for a moment. Breathe. Feel the ground beneath you. Remember that this is your day not because you can control what will happen, but because you can control how you will meet it. And when you rise, rise with the quiet strength of someone who has already won the first and most important battle. There was a time when I believed my feelings were guides. If I felt strong, I would move forward. If I felt tired, I would rest. If I felt uncertain, I would wait. It seemed natural, even wise, to listen to what stirred inside me. But over time, I noticed a pattern. My feelings changed like the weather. They rose and fell without asking my permission. And if I followed them, my path curved and twisted, never straight, never steady. That was when I understood that if I wanted to walk with purpose, I needed something firmer than emotion to stand on. So I gave myself a rule, not a rule meant to impress others or to sound noble when spoken aloud. A quiet rule meant only for me. It did not care how I felt when I woke. It did not bend when the day felt heavy. It did not disappear when the world became loud. It simply waited for me every morning, every evening. Asking the same question, will you honor what you chose when you were clear, or will you follow what you feel in this moment? In the beginning, this was difficult. The mind is skilled at bargaining. It says, just today you can rest, just this once you can delay. It dresses excuses in soft words, makes them sound reasonable, even kind. I learned to recognize that voice. It was not my enemy, but it was not my leader either. It was a companion that needed guidance, not obedience. There were days when the body felt like stone, when every movement carried weight, when the simple act of beginning felt like climbing a hill in the dark. On those days, my rule felt cold and unforgiving, but I followed it anyway, and something unexpected happened. The moment I took the first step, the weight shifted, not because the task became easy, but because the argument inside me fell silent. There was no longer a debate about whether to move. I had already decided. This is the quiet power of a non-negotiable path. It removes the endless conversation in your head. You no longer ask yourself who you will be today. You already know. You have chosen, and the choice stands regardless of the mood that visits you when you wake. Over time, I began to see my emotions differently. I stopped treating them as commands and started seeing them as signals. Fatigue told me I had worked. Doubt told me I was near something important. Restlessness told me my attention had wandered. None of these required me to change my direction. They simply asked me to notice. There is a deep respect that grows when you keep a promise to yourself. It is not loud, it does not announce itself, but it settles into your bones. You begin to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, the world feels less uncertain. You are no longer searching for something outside to hold you steady. You carry your own anchor. I have walked through days when praise came easily, when others spoke of progress and strength. Those days are pleasant, but they are not the true test. The true test is the day when no one notices, when no one cares, when the path feels long and empty. That is when the rule reveals its worth. It stands beside you in the silence and says, "This is who you are, even now." There is a difference between discipline and punishment. Punishment is driven by anger toward yourself. Discipline is driven by respect. I did not follow my rule because I believed I deserved hardship. I followed it because I believed I deserved to become something more than my passing moods. Each act of consistency was a way of honoring the person I was becoming, not scolding the person I had been. The world often celebrates sudden change, the dramatic decision, the bold declaration, the moment when everything turns around. But most transformation is quiet. It happens in the same small action repeated again and again, long after the excitement has faded. The rule carries you through that quiet. It keeps you moving when the story of progress is no longer interesting to tell. There were moments when I questioned my own path, when I looked at others who seemed to move faster, who changed directions easily, who appeared to find joy in variety. I felt the pull to do the same, but when I returned to my rule, I felt something steadier than envy. I felt alignment. I was where I had chosen to be, not where I had drifted. This way of living changes how you see success. Success is no longer a distant point on the horizon. It is the act of showing up today in this moment and doing what you said you would do. Tomorrow will take care of itself if you take care of now. I learned that motivation is like a flame in the wind. Sometimes it burns high, sometimes it flickers, sometimes it goes out entirely. Discipline is like the hearth that holds the flame. Even when the fire is low, the warmth remains, and with a small piece of fuel, a single action, the fire can rise again. There is also freedom in this. When your actions are guided by a rule, you stop chasing every impulse. You stop being pulled in 100 directions by every new desire or distraction. Your path becomes narrower but deeper. You walk it with more presence, more care. As days turn into months and months into years, the small acts accumulate. You may not notice the change as it happens, but one day you look back and see a distance you did not realize you had traveled. That distance was not crossed by bursts of feeling, it was crossed by quiet, steady steps. I speak to you now because I know how tempting it is to wait for the right mood, the right moment, the right surge of energy, but the moment is always now. The mood will always change. The surge will always fade. What remains is the choice you make when none of those things are present. So choose something simple, choose something clear, choose something you can return to every day. Let it become your line in the sand, your promise, your way of standing in the world, and when you wake and feel nothing at all, follow it anyway. Because in that act, repeated without fanfare, without applause, without negotiation, you will find a strength that does not depend on how you feel, but on who you have decided to be. Pain is a teacher that most men avoid. They think strength is found in comfort, in ease, in the absence of struggle. But I have learned that comfort dulls the mind and softens the will. It lulls the body into false security and convinces the spirit that it has achieved mastery when it has achieved nothing at all. The true forge of strength is found where comfort ends and difficulty begins. That is why I chose pain, not for its own sake, not to punish myself, but to learn, to sharpen, to know the limits of what I could endure. From the moment I rise, I put myself in its path. I do not wait for life to challenge me. I seek challenges that test me before the world does. I step into cold, into hunger, into long hours of practice when every part of my body demands rest. I do not move to impress, I move to know myself. And each time I do, I discover something that I did not know before. My muscles, my breath, my focus all speak to me and I listen. They reveal a truth that no ease could ever show. There is a certain clarity in suffering. When the body aches and the mind protests, distractions fall away. The superficial concerns of the world, the praise of others, the fleeting pleasures, the petty competitions fade into insignificance. Pain strips you to the core, and at that core you meet yourself. Not the self shaped by comfort, not the self molded by the opinions of others, but the true self that moves steadily without complaint toward what it has chosen. I remember long walks through mountains, each step heavier than the last. The wind cut across my face, the ground underfoot shifted and resisted my weight, and still I walked. Not because I was commanded to, not because anyone would notice, but because I had decided that this moment would not break me. In those hours, every ache became a teacher, every fatigue a lesson. I learned to move when the body screamed to stop. I learned to breathe when the lungs burned. I learned to remain focused when the mind wanted to wander. And in this, I became something more than I was. Pain also sharpens attention. In comfort, the senses relax and the mind drifts. In hardship, every sensation matters. Every breath, every muscle, every step demands notice. A slight misstep can mean a fall. A misjudged movement can cause injury. To survive, you must be precise, deliberate, aware. This precision carries into all other areas of life. The habit of paying attention formed in discomfort becomes a weapon against distraction, against error, against weakness of will. But choosing pain is not only about the body, it is about the mind. The mind seeks shortcuts, excuses, and distractions. It whispers that suffering is to be avoided at all costs. It tells you to give in, to stop, to soften. I learned to speak back. I reminded it that growth lies in difficulty, that mastery is forged in fire, that true freedom is never found in the easy path. And slowly the mind began to follow where the body and spirit were already committed. There were times when the struggle seemed endless, when each movement carried the weight of hours and each breath felt shallow. It would have been easy to stop, to turn back, to seek comfort. But I did not, because I understood that enduring is not simply bearing pain. Enduring is choosing it, walking into it, and seeing what it will teach you. It is using it as a mirror to reflect the parts of yourself that you have neglected, that you have hidden from, that you have allowed to grow weak. This habit changes the way one meets life. When others complain about small discomforts, when they turn from hardship at the first sign of resistance, the one who has chosen pain stands steady. They do not fear effort. They do not resent the challenge. They see it clearly for what it is, an opportunity to know themselves, to grow, to act with purpose. Nothing in the world, not insult, not delay, not misfortune, can shake the one who has learned to walk through fire before the world demanded it. Discomfort also teaches patience. When you endure, you discover that nothing is permanent. Pain rises, it peaks, it falls. The mind wants to rush, to escape, to end the moment. But the body and the spirit, if properly trained, remain steady. This steadiness learned in hardship carries you through moments of chaos and uncertainty. You learn to wait without anxiety, to move without haste, to act with precision even when the world presses against you. I have found that the people who avoid pain are often trapped by it without knowing. They are bound by fear, by insecurity, by the fragility of their own comfort. Their minds are easily swayed, they will easily bent, their judgment clouded by the desire to avoid difficulty. Choosing pain voluntarily removes this power. You step beyond the fear, you walk through the challenge with eyes open. You learn what is yours to control and what is not. There is also humility in this practice. Pain reminds you that you are not invincible, that the body has limits, that the mind can falter. But it also teaches respect for effort, respect for consistency, respect for the slow accumulation of mastery. You do not need to be loud about it. The results speak quietly. A steady hand, a calm mind, a body that moves without hesitation, a presence that is grounded and unwavering. Each day I seek pain in small ways, in deliberate acts that stretch me beyond what feels safe. Long hours of training, repetition until the mind grows tired before the body. Silence when the world demands sound, hunger when the body craves ease. In all of these the lesson is the same: what you face voluntarily you master, what you face unwillingly you endure. Voluntary struggle becomes the teacher, involuntary suffering becomes the test. And as I move through the hours, I carry this lesson into all things. A difficult conversation is no longer frightening. A sudden challenge is no longer overwhelming. The discomfort of delay, criticism, or failure is no longer capable of unbalancing me. The daily choice to face difficulty has made me capable of facing the world without flinching, without complaint, without distraction. I have learned that the monster is not the world, nor the opponent, nor the circumstance. It is the weakness within. And the path to overcoming that monster runs through deliberate struggle. So I rise each morning and meet my mind and body with the same question: what will you teach me today? I do not seek ease, I do not crave comfort. I choose challenge, I choose pain, I choose the teacher that others flee from, and in that choice I become steady, precise, and unstoppable.